Perfect. Welcome to everybody in person and online. I'm sure there'll be other folks joining us shortly here. My name is Hugh Van Wagenen. I am the staff liaison to this committee here at WFRC. And our chair, Mayor Walker of Draper City, and also our vice chair, Mayor Petro of Layton. It is that time of year with a legislative session where they are occupied at least for a few more minutes. So unless anybody opposes, please don't oppose. I will start the meeting and just get us going. And we'll come back to a few things once Mayor Petro and or Mayor Walker are able to join us. And Jordan, will you help me pay attention to the online stuff when that happens? Okay, Mayor Petro's on. Great. Welcome, Mayor Petro. I will. Mayor, are you okay? Mayor Walker is indisposed for a little bit. Mayor Petro, are you okay if I run this for a little bit, seeing as you're in your car and probably on your phone running from meeting to meeting? Okay, thanks for the thumbs up. Yeah, somebody else is chauffeuring you around, we hope. Just as a reminder, if you want to speak to everybody in the room and online, we do have the microphones. You have to press the little button, turn the green, and then you can be heard. And feel free to turn it off when you're done so that we don't pick up any of the other things that you might be saying on the side. And we have a full agenda, so we'll get right going. And with Mayor Petro's approval, we will do the meeting minutes and approval of the meeting minutes from our last meeting, which was October of 2024 on the 8th. So I will look for a motion from members to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Mayor Phippen, motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jared. And a second. And we'll do the old any opposed way to do this one because the virtual meeting. So if there are any opposed, please say so. Otherwise, we'll assume it's an affirmative approval of the minutes. Okay, hearing nothing, we'll keep moving on. Yes, that's exactly what we're doing right now. Jordan, thank you. So we'll do a roll call for everybody in the room. Again, Hugh Van Wagenen with WFRC. Jordan or Rosie will start down there and we'll move our way around the table.
Rosie Hernandez, Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Jordan Chandler, WFRC.
Dory Johnner, Long Range Plan Group, WFRC.
Ellen Burrell, Cottonwood Heights City Council.
Jared Bowling, AT Planning Manager at UDOT.
Dave Graff, Ogden City Council.
Ken Phippen, Far West City Mayor.
David Mitchell, Davis County.
Tom Jackson, Salt Lake County.
Travis Mount, Willard City.
Elliot Mott, volunteer organizer.
Madison Aviles, Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Samantha DeSeelhorst, Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Jay Mosqueda, Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Matt Ryan, WFRC.
Ben Withrich, WFRC staff.
Roger Crandall, Real Salt Lake.
Mark Bradley, Brigham City.
I'll go ahead and introduce everybody online really quickly. We've got Lauren Victor, Julie Bjornstad, Brett McKiff, Ivan Hooper, David Rogers, Calvin Clark, Carl Osterberg, Mark Bradley, Travis Moat, Mac, I have no idea how to say your last name, I'm so sorry. Mac Drazaic, Elizabeth Arnold, Suzanne Harrison, Ellie Spencer, Mayor Gibson, Mayor Petro, Kay Marusis, Terry Sorey, J.L. Dancy, Julie Williams, T. Shope, Scott Shea, John A. Nardone, and S.A. Tomlin.
Thanks, Jordan. And welcome to our returning members again. So it's our first meeting of the year. So Mayor Jepson of Perry, Mayor Moat of Willard, Mayor Mon of Syracuse, Mayor Petro of Layton, who's also our vice chair, as mentioned, Commissioner Fackrell of Morgan County, Mayor Gale of Morgan City, Councilmember Harrison of Salt Lake County, Councilmember Manzione of Tooele City, Mayor Melly of Stockton Town, Mayor Merrill of Alpine City, Jared, who introduced himself, Stephanie Tomlin, who's online, both with UDOT, Russ Fox of UTA, Chris Wiltsey with Bike Utah, Brent McKiff with Utah Department of Health. And then a special welcome to our new members, Mayor Dustin Gettle of Midvale, who was unable to be here, but Mayor Ken Phippen and Councilmember Dave Graff, Far West and Ogden, respectively. Thanks so much for being here. We really look forward to working with y'all. Anything you'd like to say as new members of the committee at all?
No, just that I've had the opportunity to attend a couple of workshops in the last couple of years. It's an exciting process, and I'm looking forward to participating in this at another level.
Thanks, Councilmember.
Just happy to be here.
Thank you, Mayor. Awesome. Well, again, we really appreciate your willingness to serve and look forward to a great year to everybody. So now we'll jump into, as a part of the chair's report, item 2B, talking about current initiatives. And there are a lot of great regional active transportation initiatives underway at the moment, and some of which we'll hear a little bit more about later in today's agenda, including Beehive Bikeways, Utah Trail Network, and the Active Transportation Count Program. But two initiatives we'd like to speak about right now include an active transportation education course we're discussing, and mobile active transportation tours, or MATs for short. So I'm supposed to be reading this as Mayor Walker, so I'll turn the time over to Hugh and let him talk about the AT education course. So, and welcome, Mayor. Thanks for being here. No problem. Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. As you know, WFRC and MAG and UDOT and UTA and other partners work together often on different types of projects. And one thing that we've been tossing around as a group of partners is trying to develop an active transportation education curriculum, right, to allow thinking elected officials and others, right, to get a little bit more in depth. Maybe somebody has an interest in this topic, but isn't as familiar with maybe the language or how to speak about it or some of the data behind it. And so we're working on organizing some sort of course that would sort of walk you through, how to speak about it, how to talk to other people about it, how to maybe bring people along, et cetera, et cetera. But before we got too far into it, we just wanted to hear from folks on the committee and around the room if this is something that they think would find valuable. If so, what type of topics you think would be helpful, right, for people that are just sort of on the edge and like this stuff, but maybe aren't into it as day to day, of course, as I am and others. So one sort of general response, you think this is something that we should put some resources in, again, without knowing a whole lot of detail. And two, if you think so, are there topics that jump out? You say, I would like to learn more about that, and I would appreciate some curriculum being developed and in a way to absorb that material. So I'll just open it up.
Well, I think the time has come. It's perfect. And having served now for 3 years in office, and really the reason I ran was related to unsafe roads for pedestrians, cyclists, and the motorists themselves. I do find it's very difficult to advance things related to safer streets and better mobility for our citizens because of a lack of understanding, a basic lack of understanding. There's people on my council who I say things like, my wife doesn't ride the bus, and, I never am gonna, walk or roll anywhere. Well, they don't say walk or roll, they say get on a bicycle, I guess. But the point is, I think that this is really very needed. I think that there's a lot of acronyms that get thrown around in the transportation world. And I think that the legislators, obviously we're considered down ticket, you could say, in the world of politics, those in the municipal level. But many people in the municipal level end up at the state and federal level, and we need those people to have the tools, the language, the understanding. And I'm only being extremely graphic. I don't mean to take too long, but it really became apparent to me 5 years ago when I called and asked Patrice Arendt, who perhaps I respect as much or more than any legislator I've ever known. And she said, frankly, transportation generally is a subject I don't really understand, and I always defer to Andrew Gruber, which to her credit, she deferred to Andrew Gruber. But I say that not to in any way defame Therese Arendt, but I say it because there is such a need for giving, again, politicians at all levels the understanding, the terminology, to understand the basics of transportation, and certainly as then it relates to active transportation.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other thoughts? Somebody online, Jordan? Brett, please.
Yeah, first of all, I think this is a brilliant idea because half the time we spend our efforts putting towards things on education, but knowing what angle is often really, really tricky. So whether it's active transportation and health, active transportation and public safety, active transportation and economics, all of these things would be really, really helpful to have something a little bit more structured so somebody could grab what parts they need as opposed to saying, put me in for everything. You know, just give me where I can get the most information for the least amount of time, because we know people are busy.
So modules, different modules, right? And then people can latch on to the ones that speak to them. Okay, thanks. It's great.
And I also just echo what he is saying, that there's a general misunderstanding of how powerful the economic piece is to this. And particularly in our business community, there's not an understanding. So it would be great if these tools were such that we could even take them to our business associations or Chamber of Commerce so that they can understand that property values go up when there are multi-use trails through neighborhoods and easements and ways for people to actually walk and roll effectively, safely.
Yeah, good point. Nobody else? Tongues are burning? Okay. Well, I didn't hear don't waste your time on this. So I think those are great suggestions and it's good feedback and we'll keep moving. Jared's nodding his head. Been working really closely with Jared on this. So thank you for that. And stay tuned, I guess is what I'll say with regards to that. Now, Chris, I think I see you there. You want to chime in about the mats a little bit?
Yeah. Am I able to share my screen?
I think so.
Okay. Can you all see that?
Got it.
Cool. Okay, so we want to get ahead for next year for our mobile active transportation tour. Normally, we hold these tours, if you're not familiar with them, to explore other cities and areas that have had really good success with active transportation. And so this year we are going to New Jersey, and next year we're looking at going out to Colorado, and we'll look at Boulder and Fort Collins. And so I can send out this flyer to all of the people in this meeting. It just has some of the basic information about that. It's just so you can start thinking about it and talking about it and budgeting for it. But we're looking at tentatively 2 days, 2 nights with an estimated cost of $900. And so everybody who's in this meeting, it would make sense for you to go to one of these mats. I think they've always been very positive, even for me, who in a lot of ways lives biking and walking. I still learn a ton on these trips, and I still like the last one I went on was Davis in California, and I still think about my experiences on that on a daily basis in the work that I do. Does anybody have any questions?
Thanks, Chris. And what time of year are we shooting for?
Spring, early summer. Probably spring is usually when we end up going out.
And what was the makeup, I'd be curious, at the Davis of elected representatives versus WFRC staff, et cetera, out of Utah?
Yeah, I think it was only a couple WFRC staff. The elected folks, I'd say maybe made up, I don't know, maybe like a fifth or something like that. And then the rest were mostly government staff. Or maybe it was more elected than that, Hugh.
So how many went, I'm just curious, from Utah last year versus are on the record to go, or signed up to go to Hoboken?
Yeah. Hugh, what would you say? It was like 20 people on the Davis trip?
Yeah, 20 or 21 to Davis, California.
Yeah, and now it's 35 for this trip. So big
Well, I
jump.
could say that I'm really looking forward to being there, and my CED is also coming from Cottonwood Heights. We're really excited about going to New Jersey.
Yeah. Cool. Any
Thanks,
other
Chris.
questions?
No, I'll just echo that these are valuable opportunities, and we know it can take a lot of time and days and resources to get people out on these trips, but we learn a lot, and it's a lot of good collaboration coming back when we get back home. So just giving people a heads up about Colorado in 26, and we'll certainly report out on how things go in New Jersey, but that's not until the end of April. So we'll hear about that probably in July, our July meeting.
Have the dates been set?
For Colorado?
Yes.
Not yet, no. Yep. Save the season is what we're calling this one. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Now it's time for public comment. And we have a few minutes for this. So if you're here in the room and you'd like to join us, you can step up to the podium and please tell us your name and who you're representing. And go ahead with public comment, and then we'll look for people online as well if there's any folks. But now would be the time for public comment.
Hello, I'm Roger Crandall. Just commenting on your first topic item, which seems like something we really should have here in this community, in the cities areas, is rideable system of getting kids to schools on bikes, like some people call it a bike bus or whatever. Some of you have small children, you try to get your kids back and forth to school, you can see what kind of a mess it is. I've taught for 30 years in Utah in high schools and junior high, and they have their own particular problems. In elementary, have theirs, and it's right now my wife and son working in an elementary school, another one I was attached to that they were in. It's abysmal how many cars are driving to a school that have no buses, no other transportation. They're blocking main streets like my wife's school, Esperanza Elementary, 3500 South. They're stuck out in the main street trying to come into a parking lot that goes for a block or two of just cars, one after another, trying to get kids in and out. It's horrendous. We need a real well-organized, super successful show of how easy this could be done and how successful it could be and how good it be good for all kinds of reasons, for the health, the welfare, bringing the kids out on bikes, getting them to school, having parents and people, community involved, enjoying it, something that we could show, you could see on TV news and shown over and over again. And if one success is terrific, then it will build to other ones, and other schools and other places will try to set that in motion. But it should be something like a full court press from everyone here and Bike Utah and community type people, leaders, mayors, whatever, to make it a fantastic, super successful example of how in this new age we get kids to school and not have to have every single parent drive dozens and dozens of cars or sit waiting for 40 minutes while the car's engines are going. And I'd like to see that happen. I think it'd be a fantastic success story. And maybe we need to look in other communities in the country and see who's really pulled it off perfectly well. We can't just, it'd be nice if we could duplicate Holland and Denmark and stuff, but that's not going to happen right now. We need to do an American experiment of it, the way the situations are here and the way people's mentality is, and see if we can't put it together to be something fantastic. I'd enjoy to work on something like that myself with other people. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Anybody else? Anybody online? Okay. We'll move forward. And I know there's resources out there, so maybe we just need to get organized, right? Move Utah, Safe Routes to School, Bike Utah has been working on bike buses and those types of programs as well. So thanks for the reminder. And
May I just say one thing, because I spend a lot of time on this. You know, this is largely left to the parent advisory committees for each school, which I don't think is working. And UDOT, I don't know if they're in the room here today. I've been trying to work with them related to Union Middle School right there on a state route 700 East. No responsiveness. It's a 0. And I think the principals, they have their hands full just trying to run the school. I've talked to them, but I'm not getting any traction. And the children are getting either struck or near miss from right-hand turning cars. Every motorist, so I don't mean to, this is absolutely critical that the safe route system, in my opinion, anecdotally, however, I've been working on this for years, is not working in Utah. We're doing a bike bus to one of our elementary schools in Cottonwood Heights. It's the first one that I'm aware of that we've done, but it's better than nothing. But again, I think our UDOT has monies for this. We need to activate UDOT, and we need to activate legislators that when they are putting together new tracts of homes and even in gentrified cities like Cottonwood Heights, we need to figure out how to make the easements, how to make truly safe routes to school. And as you said, it's been done. I didn't grow up here, and I had safe routes to school. And we need to, I really appreciate your comments today, Roger. That is just critical.
And Councilmember, yeah, Jared Bowling here is representing UDOT today, and so he heard you. So I'm taking notes. All right, moving on. So item number 4, BI Bikeways and workshop feedback update. So I mentioned earlier, BI Bikeways is a regional active transportation initiative. For those of you with us in person, we have these fun little stickers that we've handed out. If you're online and would like one of these, you can join us next time or make a request and we can send something out to you. We'd be happy to do that. Now I'll turn the time over to Julie Bjornstad here with WFRC to give us a little update on the BI Bikeways. Julie.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so we're gonna do a little update on the BI Bikeways, and then after a little presentation, there'll be 2 discussion questions. To pay attention, this is your cue to pay attention to be a part of the discussion at the end. Most of you probably are aware of the BI Bikeways, but I'm just gonna do a little overview of it in the case that we have new folks here, or you might have forgotten. So you can go ahead, Jordan, to the next slide. Just a reminder that the BI Bikeways, right, it sets out to create a network of bike paths that separate people riding bikes from people that are driving cars. So we're aiming for safer, more comfortable biking facilities. And hopefully this will translate into allowing people to bike to more places more often. One of the key priorities of the network is connecting the Wasatch Choice Centers together, and we'll show you later on in this presentation how we do that. Yeah, next. Where is the, one sec. Okay, there we go. Right, so we every few years do a household travel survey, and based on that data, where people tell us where they're going and how they're getting there, for the last few of these household travel surveys, we've seen that about half of all of the trips that people are taking in the region are less than 3 miles. We think that this is a pretty attainable distance for most people, not everyone, but for most people on a bicycle. So we know that there's great potential here to get people to switch that mode, whether they're driving or taking transit or something, to be able to take that trip by bicycle. But we know that a lot of these trips are not happening by bicycle. Next slide, Jordan, because you can see here that a lot of people are sort of in this interested but concerned category of bicycle riders, right? They want to be able to ride, but they're concerned for their safety. And so this emphasis on the separated, safer facilities should allow more people to take a bicycle if they choose for these shorter trips. So what does this look like? If you go to the next slide, Jordan. So 3 miles, if you are having trouble picturing what that distance might be, and you're familiar with southeast Salt Lake County, this is the distance basically from Draper City Center up to Sandy Cairns Center. Or if you're at our office and you wanted to spend some time in nature, getting over to Liberty Park, that's about 3 miles. And so some may think that this is still too far to bike. But if we go down to the next slide, Jordan, we can see that a 1 mile bike trip might just be the Draper City Center up to Pirates O Gourmet Market on 7th, if you know where that is. Or again, if you're at the WFRC office, going over to the City Creek Bridge, where the track station is there on Main Street. And so these 1 mile trips are pretty competitive with driving, right? So Jordan, if you go back up to the left side, you'll see that taking this bike trip by is about 7 minutes, which is basically the same amount of time it would take you to get with a car. And actually, if you were going from the WFRC office to City Creek, you could probably get there, Google says, 1 minute faster than driving. So you may be thinking like, I'm not willing to take some of these trips because the facilities that are on the road now aren't safe enough for me. So reminder that, yeah, now you can go down to the next slide, Jordan. That when we talk about Beehive Bikeways, we're talking about these facilities that are either physically separated in some way, whether that's a grade separation, we're having, another type of a physical separation. So you'll see on the agenda, next slide, that this agenda item is update on the Beehive Bikeways and the Utah Trail Network. And you might have been engaging with UDOT as they've been developing their trail network. And you might be thinking to yourself, how do these two things relate to one another? And both the Utah Trail Network and the Beehive Bikeways have their focus on separated facilities that are highly comfortable connecting major destinations together. But we know, and you know, that the state can't build all of these trails everywhere. So next slide, Jordan. If you think about this system, here's the centers. You're gonna have to click through this, Jordan. And then the Utah Trail Network is building this backbone of these regional trails. The Beehive Bikeways can then come in and be able to connect people, connect more towards those centers and to those more local destinations. And then we can sort of fill the gap in with other bike lanes and other types of facilities. We often compare this to the highway and collector metaphor. So the UTN would be your highways, and then the Beehive Bikeways would be your arterials and your collectors. Yep. So how is this connected to the Wasatch Choice vision? So this idea of the Beehive Bikeways is being grounded in the Wasatch Choice vision centers. If you can click through this, Jordan. So reminder that one of our vision strategies, we have 4. The first one is providing transportation choices. And so we are trying to provide those transportation choices to and from and within centers. We also have, yep. So you can see here, these are all the currently defined Wasatch Choice centers in Salt Lake County. And today's trails, next slide, you can see, don't totally go to all the centers, right? There's many centers that are on this map that have no existing regional trail that go to them. Some do, like downtown South Salt Lake and Sugar House, you can see Parley's Trail connects to them, even if there's some gaps there. And so if you go to the next slide, what we're trying to do with the Beehive Bikeways is really be able to connect all of those centers. Some of these bike routes you see don't go through a center, but just touch it. But we're trying to give you more options, and this kind of completes that network. So you might be thinking, is this just Julie and Hugh sitting down and on a map and putting these routes? And that is not true. Someone mentioned before the Wasatch Choice workshops. Go to the next slide, Jordan. And so we started building this network in the fall of 2023. We looked through the regional transportation plan and pulled out some of the main facilities that were in the 2023 regional transportation plan. At our 2023 fall workshops, we asked participants about this idea, what facilities, what centers to connect. And then we followed up with any city in the region that has a Beehive Bikeways and had one-on-one individual city meetings over the spring and summer of 2024. Last fall, we had another round of Wasatch Choice Fall workshops where we took sort of a more finalized map based on that feedback from the individual city meetings and to get sort of a last blessing. Are you okay with this first round of Beehive Bikeways network to move forward with? So we're still processing some of that feedback now, but we have a pretty good sense of what this initial network will look like. If you go to the next slide, Jordan, we've also done some modeling in some of our new bike models to try to understand what the benefits might be of a bigger network of regional trails. And I think that there's two really key pieces of information we got back from that modeling. The first being that there's more jobs and housing that are located near these facilities. So if we implemented the Beehive Bikeways as we have it now, over 900,000 jobs, or about 70% of the region's jobs, would be within a quarter mile of a separated facility. And about 400,000 households, or about 60% of the region's households, would be within a quarter mile of this network. And through that, we see about a 42% increase in the number of bike miles that are traveled within centers. So we see this sort of huge jump in people who are biking with this Beehive Bikeways network being built. Yeah, so we'll just walk through an example of what this might look like on the ground. If you go to the next slide, Jordan. So let's say that you're in Murray downtown. Maybe you're getting some passport photos taken at the city hall, and then you need to run an errand. If you go to the next slide, down to the Oakwood Village Center. Let's say maybe you need to get some dry cleaning done. And after you do those two errands, let's say you want to meet your family down in Fort Union to get some dinner. If you go to the next slide, Jordan. And so you can see that this would be, sorry, click again. So these three centers we're trying to connect right now would be on, Van Winkle, right? Yep. No, sorry, Vine Street. Maybe not the safest place for someone to bike. But if we can connect these, if you go to the next slide, Jordan, with separated pathways between these three centers, right? This bike ride is just under 5 miles. It would take about 27 minutes to do. And that's relatively competitive to someone who's driving, especially if you're stopping multiple places along the way. If you go to the next slide, Jordan, you can see that currently your route would look something like this. There's 5 lanes of traffic. You do have a shoulder, but you also have that red car who can't stay in their own lane, which might make you think that you shouldn't be on this facility if you feel unsafe that people can't stay in their own travel lanes. And so we're asking the question, what would you, how much safer would you feel, if you go to the next slide, Jordan, if you could do that same route on something like this, where there's maybe some type of protection and you're separated a little bit more from traffic. Just pretend that there's cars there to make it seem more equal, because obviously without the cars, it's a much nicer trip. Okay, so that's generally what we're trying to do with the Beehive Bikeways. Before we go into our discussion, does anyone have any questions about what we're trying to accomplish here with the Beehive Bikeways, or how the network is getting developed?
Yes, I perhaps have more of a comment, although I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. As a active transportation bicyclist myself, and that's fun that you brought up the route between Holiday, Midvale, and Cottonwood Heights. I ride all those roads regularly. And I will say of Vine Street, what makes Vine Street comfortable for me, yet I'll be the only one I'll see on a bicycle in Vine Street on my 20-minute ride, is that the cars are not moving fast. One of the greatest dangers that I have seen grow and grow in the decades that I've lived in Salt Lake County is the speed and aggressiveness of drivers. It scares people in their own car, no less. There's not very understandable why people aren't willing to get on bicycles. So I don't see in the equation, I know you can't give us everything you've thought of for Beehive bicycles, but I don't know how long it will take to attain this wonderful grid that you've put together. But unless municipalities, UDOT, and others that are in a position to affect vehicular violence, unless we as a society start taking it more seriously, that speed kills. The slower the speed, cars can slow down enough that they either will maybe injure but not kill the bicyclist. But we're seeing more and more aggressive driving. So I feel like that needs to be mentioned in the equation of perceived safety and the advancement of the Beehive bicycle trails.
That's a great point. And some of these, hopefully, as we build out this network, there's going to be situations where we'll need a road diet or we'll need to redesign the road. And so I think both trying to take advantage of those opportunities and then also, like you're saying, do the education, make sure that it's in our messaging about just reducing speed in general is a great point. And actually, your other option about how this is getting built is one of the questions we want to ask you today. So if we go to the next slide, Jordan. So we have two discussion questions we want to engage with you in. The first being, we would like your thoughts on having the Beehive Bikeways as a core WFRC active transportation product. This would mean that we would be talking first and foremost about Beehive Bikeways when we talk about active transportation, and that we as an agency would be actively working to help implement these routes. So let's just stay, sorry, Jordan, on the first bullet. If you had any thoughts about us kind of promoting Beehive Bikeways first and foremost when we talk about active transportation, and our thoughts on sort of focusing on this as one of our implementation activities over the next few years, we would love to know if you agree with that statement. If you don't.
I love that statement. I think it does a lot for Utah and for our communities. And first and foremost, we're all concerned about our air quality, and the more people we can get out of their cars and on a bicycle or an e-bike to commute their 3 miles back and forth, the better off we all are. We talk about personal health. I think people in an active mode, moving themselves rather than getting in a car is good for our personal health. And I think finally, this really goes a long way to market Utah as an outdoor state. I mean, we're known for our recreation and our outdoor opportunities, and to get out of cars and onto a bicycle puts us in the outdoors in varying ways, and I think that's really important. I also want to kind of buttress what Ellen said about safety, and I'm going to get away from cars, and I had to talk about bike-on-bike safety. The advent of e-bicycles has changed my experience on the road as a cyclist. And I ride an e-bike to my city council meetings from my home and running errands around town. I ride a mountain bike on our trails and a road bike up in Ogden Valley. And generally, I'm just going to use this as an example, around Pineview Reservoir and out north. And there is a Pineview Reservoir loop now that's paved all the way, almost all the way around the reservoir. If I'm on my road bike on a state highway, looping around the north side of the reservoir, cars will go by me at 50 miles an hour and they'll roll down a window and yell, "Get on the bike trail." And for me, one, the road's mine too. Two, the bike trail is dangerous. People that haven't, and I'm going to exaggerate a little bit here to make my point, and this is anecdotal. Again, this isn't anything quantified. If I get on the bike trail, I'm on there with people that haven't ridden a bicycle since the 6th grade, and they're on a bike now because they've got e-mobility in an e-bike. And just because they can pedal the bike and make it go it doesn't mean they understand how to ride a bike, what bicycle etiquette and that sort of thing is. It makes it dangerous for those of us that would like to use the trail and do know what bike etiquette is and how to listen for other cyclists. So I think my point is the education component of this is really important. Thank you.
Oh, wow. I have to jump in here. So Cottonwood Heights, our police chief, 6 weeks ago came forward with an ordinance, and it is emphasizing kind of, well, I'll say regulation toward e-scooters. So I'm going to switch from the open, the Pine View Reservoir experience and come back into the urban environment. And again, my 5-person council is redlining his ordinance, and it's advancing. And I feel that, this police chief admitted, this really should come from the state instead of a municipality. But e-scooter accidents in Cottonwood Heights, and I'm sure I see Ken Phippen nodding his head, it's exploding. In fact, I have to tell ever so quick. So one of the people that works in a retail there in our Cottonwood Heights location that was just shown on the screen, that has restaurants, it also has all kind of services. And so I was there speaking with a young man who lives in Midvale. And many times, we're going to find as things develop, people who live in an apartment, Midvale is exploding with apartment buildings. So he is one of the people who lives in an apartment building in Midvale, takes Fort Union Boulevard to get to work in Cottonwood Heights. He uses an e-scooter because it's even more affordable than e-biking or bicycling. So with explosion, so I noticed when we were talking, he had this big scar along his forearm, and I wasn't going to say anything about his fresh scar on his forearm, and he volunteered to tell me that it had happened in an e-scooter accident on Fort Union Boulevard in Cottonwood Heights. So I said to my council members in a memorandum just yesterday, people need affordable living, they need affordable housing, they need affordable mobility, and e-scooters aren't going away. So we can be as punitive as we want to be about e-scooters, but we're not providing a place where they can ride. And the sidewalks on Fort Union Boulevard, guess who's on them? Pedestrians. So to your point, not only is it scary, because I'm also an e-biker and I ride it to City Hall too. So not only is it scary and dangerous for those of us that are e-biking and trying to decide, ooh, do I want to be in a share road? Do I want to, the bike lane suddenly ends and all those problems. But then those that are e-scootering, this young man, the reason why he has a scar along his forearm is because he had to get on the sidewalk, and a pedestrian standing behind a utility pole. And I can tell you in Cottonwood Heights, we're building our, whatever you want to call them, monolith sidewalks, our 10-foot wide multi-use that are supposed to take pedestrians, cyclists, e-scooters. And the man said, look, I made sure I wasn't going more than 15 miles an hour. So I was trying to be respectful of the pedestrians. But when from behind a utility pole, pedestrian stepped out, I didn't want to hurt her. So I crashed my e-scooter, and that's how I ripped open my forearm. And he was like, oh, but it was still worth it. And even though my e-scooter is now gone, and, I asked him, how long did you own it? I owned it for a year. I got a lot of use out of it. So for, $300 or $400 or less, I think he got his e-scooter for $175. I'm only bringing this in because in addition to cleaning our air and making us healthier, it's affordable mobility for people. And especially to get to work. I don't know what his distance is, probably under 3 miles to go from his apartment to his work there in the Midvale Cottonwood Heights area. So this subject, it's not just this perceptual thing. And I mean, it's admirable that the Beehive Bikeways is looking for a way to separate bicycle lanes from cars. But we need to address the difference in speed between, e-scooters and e-bicycles, for instance, from certainly pedestrians and from recreational bicyclists. So we have a real handful of stuff going on beyond the wonderful, description, and we're not going to solve it all today. But we do look to WFRC, to UDOT, as professionals, as having a focus on public health and safety to lead municipalities through this network where we have police departments and their primary concern, obviously is lessening these accidents. But ordinances are not going to get us out of the situation we're in. It's redesigning our roads. That costs a lot of money. So if we really find out what the state of Utah is about, they need to address the fact that public health and safety is in these things that Dave Graff and that I'm describing. These are real problems for municipalities. So am I in favor of connecting city centers? Sure, but way before we worry about that, we should be addressing this 49% of, the opportunities for people. And so sorry, but I have to jump back to the subject of safe routes. I just wrote down, without even thinking about it, 4 compelling reasons why, perhaps before we think about recreation and marketing Utah to the world, which I love to do, when it comes to our children, we have children and youth. Talk about frequency. They're getting to school 5 days a week. Okay. Most of them, it's for my grandson at Union Middle School, he lives maybe 1/3 of a mile, yet he has to cross 700 East, and not he nor any of the parents of any of his friends will allow those boys to go. I bet it's 1/8 of a mile to get to Union Middle School. They all drive them in a car. It's a statement of where do our priorities lie. These trips are short trips. They're frequent trips. They train our children and youth to become adults that use active transportation. Now is the time when children are in elementary through middle school to train them to think positively about getting on a bicycle or walking. And lastly, of course, shouldn't the health and safety of our children and youth trump Utah's recreation and economic drive?
Thank you,
Thank
Councilmember.
I'm going to jump in real fast, just because I feel that everything that's been said, I 100% agree with, and it's many points that I had written down that I was going to speak on, but I'll just sum it up real quickly. It's just like the way we had to change motorists on using seatbelts. To me, you got to start, and it takes a while, but if we start changing the culture and the thought about the active transportation and alternatives, then yes, I 100% support this idea, and I think we need to move forward with it.
Perfect. So let's go to the next discussion point.
Sorry, there's one more person that had their hand up, Julie. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
That's all right. I'm good. Go ahead.
Okay. Thanks, Steph.
Sorry, Steph. I didn't see you. And I was just looking at the time. So I was just going to the next bullet point, picking up off of what the mayor was saying. And so what we are trying to do internally is think of how best we can help support local governments in advancing these BI bikeways. So we just wanted your thoughts on this. Is it that you need help with planning them? You need help with designing them? You need help with building them? You would like us to focus on federal funding that might be coming in and doing more applications where we're combining projects? How can WFRC and our resources support cities and counties in helping to implement these BI bikeways?
That's a simple answer. It all comes down to funding. None of the cities really have additional funding to really pull these off the way they need to be done. But I think collectively, if we can all agree on there needs to be additional funding geared towards this, then I think you'll get more people participating and want to do the planning and identify those key corridors. But that's just my opinion.
I would also add that it's difficult to do just trail projects because of the state laws that don't allow condemnation to install trails. And so that makes it hard. Also with the corridor preservation fund with the county, they have to be a willing seller as well. That makes it difficult to get that funding source for trails.
And I would echo what was just said.
So we're hearing funding. Okay. All right. That's helpful for us to know that that is really the implementation funding that we're missing here. Anyone else want to chime in on this before we go to the second half of this update on the Utah Trail Network? Okay, I'll turn the time back over to you, Hugh.
Thanks, Julie. Great discussion, everybody. I'm taking notes here as rapidly as I can. Really appreciate it. Now, though, we'll jump to Jory Johnner and item number 5, to talk about the regional transportation plan and how some of the project selection criteria is being looked at for active transportation. Oh, and like to welcome Mayor Walker, who's joined us. Mayor, we're just plowing through, but welcome.
I apologize for being late and I'm gonna go in 5 more minutes to another thing, so.
Okay.
Thanks, Mayor. George Johnner, Long Range Planning Group, WFRC. So today I'm going to provide an update, get everybody up to speed, remind you of what the Wasatch Choice Vision is, what the RTP, Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP for short, and then, as Hugh mentioned, we're going to go into the details of active transportation selection criteria for our upcoming Regional Transportation Plan, or at least the work we're doing this year. So. The Wasatch Choice Vision, it coordinates local community land use plans, desired economic opportunities with regional transportation improvements. So you can see on this slide, tying the RTP, our Comprehensive Economic Development Study, and the local land use plans together. A quick overview, a reminder of what the RTP is. We develop it on a 4-year cycle. So the last plan was adopted May of 2023. It has a financial plan and is fiscally constrained. It conforms to applicable controls, goals, and budgets for on-road mobile sources. So that's our quality conformity component. And as mentioned previously, it ties all of the future land use plans and the Wasatch Choice Vision together. It's divided into phases, each about a decade long, for both identifying when a project's needed, and then also when we expect available revenue between now and our horizon year. So in the case of our 2023 plan, horizon year was 2050. The current developed 2027 plan will look out to 2055. So almost 30 years there. And then final reminder, as you'll hear from Ben next, the RTP is the starting place for projects to move forward to prioritization of federal, state, and local funds. So the implementation component of projects beginning built come from the RTP. So in the next few slides, I'm going to discuss with you a little bit more about our multi-step RTP process. On this graphic is a high-level process and how we review how we screen transportation concepts or ideas for the upcoming RTP. It's broken down into 4 steps or 4 periods: exploring our future, which happened 2024, developing a preferred scenario, which we'll work on this year, prioritizing the projects, which we'll do in 2026, and then finally adopting the plan in 2027. So the 2027 to 2055 RTP process, it's very similar to previous RTP process. This go around, we're enhancing our process to include exploratory concepts. So as you can see, kind of in the middle left of that flow chart, a little harder to see, but it's that the box almost exactly in the middle on the left side. These exploratory concepts will not be included in the official RTP, but will be able to be identified and available to display on the Wasatch Choice Vision on the interactive map. They may be considered for inclusion as circumstances change or future studies. So in the past, we have reviewed projects through our process, and if they didn't make it into the regional transportation plan, they were kind of left off the list of the next step. In this case, we're actually going to package them in this exploratory concepts bucket and have a way for everybody to kind of see those projects that were pretty good ideas, but just not quite ready for the regional transportation plan. So as you saw in the previous slide, the first step to our process is testing concepts. The regional transportation concepts we'll test in this process will come from quite a few sources. First of all, we're going to look at our current 2023 to 2050 RTP. No reason to go around to reinvent the wheel and start from scratch. So we're going to really take a hard look at the current plan, make sure that these projects are what we want, they're still warranted, and we want to move them forward into the next plan. Last year, we did some strategy testing, and for active transportation, these included looking at master plan updates, the Beehive Bikeway efforts, which you just heard, and the Utah Trail Networks that UDOT's working on now. So we'll want to make sure we capture all those ideas. Projects from local communities that we received at the last fall workshops. So we held 8 workshops across the Wasatch Front, took a lot of ideas from local communities. We want to make sure we're reviewing those through our process. Projects that we receive through stakeholder outreach. So we meet with quite a few stakeholders from large landholder groups, universities, interested transportation agencies or advocacy groups to get their ideas. So we'll test all those. And then updates to projects from any recent new study. So if there's been a study out there, we want to make sure we capture those that have came since we've adopted or amended our last plan. And then we did have a public comment period, and we'll make sure we review all those projects as well. So on this slide, it's a little bit more zoomed in. So there you can see at the bottom left, the exploratory concepts bucket. But right now we're going to focus in on those, kind of you can see where the squiggly lines are. That's what we're going to work on this year. So think of it between now and this next fall. The first 2 steps are exploring our future and developing a preferred scenario. We're going to do this, and a reminder, our preferred scenario is a system of projects that are needed by 2055 for all of our modes. So at this point, we're not getting into when projects are needed. This is just what's needed between now and 2055. And then in 2026, we'll get into the details of identifying what projects are needed in which phase. So we've worked closely with UDOT and UTA planning staff, the Regional Growth Committee, Technical Advisory Committee, and the Regional Growth Committee have reviewed and provided input on our preliminary and technical screening criteria for all the modes. Today, we're going to focus on active transportation. No surprise, since this is the committee to do that. So as we get through into these, let me know if you have any questions or comments or thoughts, and Hugh and I will hopefully be able to help answer any of those. These criteria, like I made mention, will help us screen projects through this process this year. So we have a lot of projects. Hugh, there's over 800 projects in our current plan. I'm sure we received hundreds of projects off the workshop map. So we're going to be reviewing over 1,000 projects through this process in the coming year. Next slide. So let's jump into it. This is the preliminary screening for active transportation. Again, this determines the main purpose for active transportation, and this varies a little bit between road and transit and active transportation. But for active transportation, we want to screen out or determine whether a project is regional in nature or more local in nature. Like I made mention, there's currently about 830 active transportation projects in the current RTP. This number has grown over the years, and partly because you can assume there's just more attention and desire to have active transportation in a regional transportation plan. There's more funds available, so it's grown. Part of that is that, and part of it could just be a a little bit of, maybe call it scope creep, or we're getting a little bit of extra local projects in our plan. So the goal of this is to really focus in on the regional aspect of the plan and see if these make sense. So four main criteria we want to look at in this first criteria or first screening process. Does the project connect at least neighborhoods within a city? Does the project connect at least 2 or more cities? Does the project fill a gap to an existing regional route? Or does the project provide a connection between 2 regional routes? So a lot about connectivity, connecting to our existing system, or connecting within a community or to an adjacent community is mainly the 4 criteria that we're thinking about that would make a project more regional. Do you guys have any thoughts on those first criteria?
Do I ever? Again, before I started serving in office and over the last 3 years, it is very apparent to me, and it's understandable. There's, Wasatch Front Regional Council. But there needs to be a paradigm shift, in my opinion, from all of this emphasis on regionality, especially when it comes to active transportation. We already heard related to the Beehive bikeways that, people are even afraid to ride 3 miles. So this idea of these bikeways that connect between cities, a very small percentage of the people of our population in my lifetime are going to ride between cities. Sure, there's some. One of my best friends rode all the way up to the University of Utah the whole time in her scientific career from Mill Creek. Are there people like that? Absolutely. And are they mavericks and wonderful? Yes. I wish we could all be more like them. But already for the 4 criteria, and I don't mean to pick on Jory because I think the world of Jory. He's taught me a lot over the last 5 years. But here's the thing. What I'm hearing, unless I misunderstood it, is that only the first criteria is interested in neighborhood to city or neighborhood to neighborhood. I don't even know if I heard that. But the other 3 are all regional in nature. And we have, again, this core problem in our system that is changing so rapidly that unless we shift our paradigm of thinking, that if we want more people using active transportation, we should be focusing on children getting to school. That's maybe 1 to 2 miles that they might ride their bike or walk. And are the intersections safe? Are the easements built? The problems that my colleague here on to my left, and I'm sorry, I don't know her name, she brought up. We have these core impediments at the municipal level from advancing safe active transportation. The mechanisms at both the state and I should say the code and ordinances at the code at the state and county level. So I appreciate that Jory's in long-term planning. And I've participated in all the workshops that they've offered related to this RTP. But it comes back to this paradigm shift of thinking of active transportation. Let's get that 49% of people who would like to do more, but don't because out of fear that they perceive too much danger, just even riding 3 miles, no less. This regional emphasis that both the state and the WFRC RTP is focused on.
Appreciate the comment, Ellen. A couple of things pop up is I think the 3rd and 4th one there, connecting to existing routes or filling gaps, could capture some of what you're looking at. Also a reminder that all local communities have, I think across the region, Hugh, remind me, we've had almost all, if not all of them, have updated the local active transportation master plan. So this isn't taking away from those master plans or even the focus of each of the local communities to provide those more local connections within the community. We're just trying to fine tune it a little bit. I think if you look at our current plan, when I started here at WFRC, we didn't have a prioritized list. We just took the local master plans and stitched them all together on a map. And then when you looked at the map, there were thousands of projects, active transportation, and no one knew where to start. They just looked at it and kind of went, this is overwhelming. There's too much on here. And then we decided to start prioritizing and look more regionally. But I do think you're right. Those small connections are really important within a community. We're just trying to find that difference between what fits in the regional transportation plan and what doesn't. And we do the same thing with UTA on our transit system. We look at more fixed guideway transit routes, the enhanced bus routes, and then UTA has a long-range transit plan that includes the micro transit or the VIA service, the local bus service, the express bus services that maybe only run in peak periods. And so they're all still out there and they're part of the bigger system. And I think there's a way we want to continue to show our regional transportation plan, the existing routes, try to get our database up to speed, and the local routes. So if you want to look at them all, you can. So I don't know if that helps a little bit. But again, and Hugh, if you have anything to add within this.
Yeah, and if it's all right, Councilmember, anybody else have a thought on this, just as the discussion's been going on? And what I will add is, as somebody who, gets to be involved in this work on a day-to-day basis, which I am truly grateful for, is this is an inherent tension with the agency, all right, at WFRC being a regional agency, a convener, people that brings, an agency that brings people together to coordinate, and how active transportation functions geographically, right, was what you touched upon, Councilmember, and how far people are going. So we're trying to strike this balance between being that regional entity and bringing communities together to coordinate and highlighting priorities across the region, knowing that there's a lot of work that needs to be done and we can still support to get those smaller connections, right, within a community. That's why we still have one thing that talks about within a community. But as Jory mentioned, if we show everything on the regional transportation plan that every community has developed within their own planning process, it's overwhelming. Where do you start? It dilutes other projects. And so we're trying to strike this balance because there is a tension, right, just from a planning perspective and where to put resources. So it's not to ignore everything that needs to happen locally because it's absolutely critical, but also to say what is the appropriate space for the regional transportation plan to play as we move this forward. Hopefully that helps.
And similar on the roads, we don't include all the subdivision streets within our regional transportation plan out to 2055. We do a cutoff of collector and minor arterial and principal arterials and freeways within our plan. Some agencies don't even do collectors. They do one level above that even and have a little bit more focused on regional roads. We've went down one level in that. So very similar on our modes, but again, we all understand, I think, around here that the short trips really make a big difference and we want to focus on them. And I also think that as some of these more regional routes get built, we'll start filling them in with more local routes. We have a list hundreds of miles along, right, of projects that we'll want to build around the region. So any other thoughts on these top four? Anything online, Jordan?
May I just share a term that one of my constituents brought to my attention? It's called infrastructure seeding. And what I think it expresses is that, we have a challenge in our modern time here in the 21st century. Do we continue to focus on building, build, when we need also to have equal focus on the ongoing operations and maintenance? So it's kind of a sexy, provocative, wonderful thing to talk about build. I'm going to build this and I'm going to build a VMS sign and I'm going to widen and build more lanes and all these things. And I live in a city where people are coming off a freeway, Interstate I-215. They've been driving 80 to 90 miles an hour. Then they get on the arterial and they feel entitled to drive 50 to 65 miles an hour. Then they get on my collectors and arterials and, well, ours are right there. So we have this paradigm that won't happen overnight. I really like the analogy to seat belts because I'm old enough. My dad wouldn't leave the driveway until we were seat belted in. I thought all families did that. And then I found out, no, my dad was very conscientious. So I'm just saying that we I keep using the word paradigm shift. We need to really think about safety first. And when it comes to build out and regional, is going faster by 30 seconds in your commute more important than the life and limb of people in nearby cars and on foot and on bicycle?
Great. No, I appreciate the comments. I think a lot of efforts are going in this direction. I know UDOT's looking at how speed limits are assigned, a different methodology with that. And so hopefully we'll hear about that. And we're fortunate enough to have Jared and Hugh, who lead our Unified Transportation Planning Active Transportation Committee. So it's a statewide effort, and coordinating with the other MPOs and statewide. And I believe, you know, operation and maintenance of active transportation facilities are on their radar to keep looking and improving, you know, some of the data and the efforts there statewide. So appreciate it. No one can ride if there's piles of snow in there, if they're not swept, things like that. We've heard those before. All right, last slide here. Well, second to last. Technical screening. So if a project moves forward from the preliminary screening, it'll go through technical screening process. If it doesn't pass the technical screening, this is where it would be moved into the exploratory bucket. If it passes the technical screening, then it goes into the regional transportation plan. So criteria that we're looking at to go into the regional transportation plan is it part of the Beehive Bikeways or Utah Trail Network? A lot of efforts has went and taking place on those two separated family-friendly facilities. We didn't think it made sense to not move them forward unless something came up, right? Like there's a reason to hold them back into exploratory. So for the 99% of them, I'm assuming they're going to get put into the regional transportation plan. Does the project overcome major barriers such as interstates, waterways, railroads, things like that? So we're going to be looking at how these facilities help alleviate some barriers. Does it serve major destinations? Not well served right now by regional active transportation. So would this be a new connection to an area? Does it improve safety features on an existing facility? So are we upgrading a facility to a better active transportation project or in just general adding the safety features? And then do we have community transportation partner or the landowner's support with minimal impacts to sensitive land? So we want to make sure projects that go into the regional transportation plan that we have local community support, we have other stakeholders and partners support of those projects. So that's a pretty key one there. And so those are the 5 main criteria we're looking at active transportation moving into the regional transportation plan, and open up any questions or thoughts or comments on those. All right.
I'm going to pipe in just real quickly here. So if you don't mind going back real quick. So overcoming barriers. Anybody who knows my little city knows we have nothing but barriers. We have highways, freeways, canals that run right through the middle of town. And so it's very difficult to even connect our neighborhoods because of those, I'll call them impediments, barriers. And so I'm really looking forward to a partnership with UDOT, because UDOT is going to be key in getting across any of this. And of course, our other folks we need to get with are canal people, federal government, you know, all of that in order to get over, through, and even along those. So thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that. I think most communities feel a very similar piece of sentiment to that. All right, lastly, so after we complete the technical screening for all of the modes, as you can see, they're fairly siloed when we're looking at these projects, either by road or transit or active transportation. We want to look at how the projects interact between each other. So we're going to look to see, do the projects in the draft preferred scenario, do they complement or support each other? Do they conflict with another project that we're wanting to move forward? And do we need to make any adjustments to these projects as we continue to look at these projects and screen them this summer? So we want to really do a good job, or try to do a good job at like looking at how those projects work together. We know that there's right-of-way constraints. We know that there's Other things that come up when you pair up these projects, good or bad. And so we'll look at those. We're going to work through this process over the next 9 months. We'll bring these out. We're going to utilize the Regional Growth Committee Technical Advisory Committee. So if you have your, make sure your local planners are attending this, UDOT, UTA attend. We're going to be coordinating really closely with UDOT, UTA, and expect follow-up. We're just getting through all the comments from the last workshop, so expect some follow-up from projects you put on the maps around those workshops. And with everything's geared towards this coming fall's workshops of bringing a draft preferred scenario out to the local communities for review. We'll take comments on that draft preferred scenario, see if we heard you correctly over the last year. After we lock that down, then we'll move towards fiscal constraints. So later this year, later this summer, we're going to start developing the criteria for how we're going to phase projects, just so we're queued up, ready to go when we get passed through the workshops. But we'll bring the phasing criteria to this group to get your eyes on how we want to identify for projects needed sooner than other projects. This is that component. The last part, 2026, will be comparing projects to projects, scoring them out of 100 points, seeing which ones are needed sooner than others. So with that, Hugh concludes the presentation. Happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure we can send some follow-up information if needed with our meeting after the meeting.
Yeah, still time to work through this, especially on the technical criteria as we work through this through 2025. So thank you, Jory, for presenting that. Really appreciate it. Now we'll go to Netta County with UDOT to tell us about the Regional Active Transportation Count Program. Thanks, Netta.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, this is the first time I'm using this one.
Yeah, just keep it close.
Okay, cool. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm very excited to be here with you all to share what we have. To share what we have done in the past 2.5 years on the Regional Active Transportation Count Program, a data-driven approach. So I'm Nada Kiani, Active Transportation Data and Project Manager with UDOT Planning. And this is an effort that I'm here, that I'm, kind of presenting it, but this is an effort that UDOT, WFRC, CMAQ, and UTA, and a couple of other private sectors been helping us and partnering with us to do this report. So I'm here presenting it, but this has been an effort that a lot of people were involved in it in the past couple of years. So I hope that you find values in it and you can use, the results. Also, I'm going to share the report and also the tools and other data or GIS stuff that I'm talking about today. So don't worry, you don't need to take pictures or anything. I'm going to share that with you and Jory so they can send it to you. Also, the presentation will be available as well. Next slide. So we know that people are using our roads and our infrastructures. Why do we want to count them? We know that there are people's biking, walking, but it's important for us to know that how, when, where, because there are a lot of benefits in counting, active transportation users on street facilities, either they're on street facilities, state roads, local roads. There are so many benefits with counting pedestrians. For example, when we're counting active transportation users, it's essential for data-driven planning and data-driven decision-making. It's essential for traffic operations and travel demand modeling. Also, if we don't have reliable data when it comes to active transportation counts, we can't actually track any trends. We don't understand the demands for the future. We can't measure the success, or we can't justify the investment for the future needs. Also, we can't, plan ahead. That's what we are here. We're planners. Also, if we have access to the count, active transportation count, and also active transportation user count, we can identify the areas that have high users, high pedestrian users, high cyclist users, which safety is very important when it comes to those areas. So we can understand where most of the safety improvements are needed. And if we can incorporate this type of consistent data collection when it comes to AT users or active transportation users, we can align those data collections with the national best practices to secure funding and grants, which is very important when it comes to active transportation planning, because there's not a lot of fundings. It's very limited. So we definitely want to use those counts to be able to secure funding and grants and things like that. There's so many benefits to it. I don't want to bore you. Let's dive into the next slide. So now we know that we need to count active transportation users, but why do we need to have a regional or a statewide approach? Why do we need to collaborate with other agencies? So we've been working on this project. We've been working on this project for 2-3 years. But before that, we know that there are a lot of agencies and there are a lot of locals throughout Utah that are collecting and counting active transportation here and there, but it hasn't been coordinated. Also, the data was not in a consistent format. There was different data sources. When there's need to access to the data, we didn't know who is doing what where, but we know that there are some established active transportation count programs throughout the state. So that was the reason that UDOT, UTA, WFRC, MAG came together and funded this project, this program throughout the Joint Project Committee. I probably will call it JPC, but remind me not to. So Joint Project Committee, so they funded this project to come up with a robust, creating a robust and a strong counter program that, will be consistent between different agencies. So we partnered with those agencies, and also we partnered with a couple of locals and private sectors in the past 2.5 years to come up with some recommendations and program guidance when it comes to counting pedestrians. I'm gonna, in the following slides, I'm gonna share some of those key findings, the program purpose, and some of the next steps to ensure the long-term success for these type of program. Next slide, please. So there's so many things to cover, and all of them are going to be in the report, but I'm going to just go through the first 3 chapters of the program, which was about the state of the practice. We've done a lot of extensive research on the literature review. We conducted throughout literature review to learn from national best practices, from a report like NCHRP or FHWA or NACTO. We also look into case studies from different DOTs that are doing something similar to what we want to achieve, like Minnesota, Florida, Texas DOT, and they really helped us, shape our methodology in moving forward with counting, methodology in Utah. Also, we 2 years ago, I think 2 years ago, 1.5 or 2 years ago, we performed a statewide Google survey that some of you may have saw that survey or even took the survey to understand what agencies or locals are counting pedestrian, where those established count programs are, or find out if any agencies or locals are interested in establishing their count program. Throughout that survey, we learned, about some of the challenges, some of the limitations, some of the benefits of those programs, and also we identified those key data producers throughout that survey that led to 6 to 8 interview and meetings with those focus group with different regions within UDOT, and also Park City, City of San George, different experts from MAG area. So we talk about all of the challenges they had, and also we kind of work out through different form of partnership in moving forward. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, the program also throughout, reaching out to all different regions and different locals, we also figure out there are different technologies like LiDAR technology and radar technology that are being used right now widely, especially through UDOT, that they're using them to count vehicles. So we wanted to test those technology to understand if we can count, non-motorized trips or travelers like bicyclists or pedestrians with LiDAR and radar technology. And I know that they're very promising, and I'm not telling you, otherwise, But for the purpose of this project, when we piloted some of the locations in Provo or even Region 4 and Region 3, and we used some of the equipments and Traffic and Safety Division UDOT helps us a lot with testing those locations, but it was not really promising for the purpose of the purpose of this study or program. So we kind of going to refine those technology or the approach those technology within UDOT, at least for the state road in the future. But moving forward, this program is going to focus mostly on the technology, counter technology that are out there, like traffics, echo counter technology or vendors or other vendors that are out there, especially because a lot of locals are using them already. So it's easier to partner with the local agencies to bring all those agencies together and use those technologies. But moving forward, and we have all of those data about those pilots and those tests and technology within the report if you are interested to see and learn about them. Next slide.
May I ask, you mentioned regions 3 and 4. Do you have it for region 2?
I think it was in Provo, and for the side fire data, I thought it was in Region 4, right?
Yeah, these were just test locations for
Test
the new
locations, yeah.
technology that were being tested. So the program itself covers Region 2, but their site selection for the technology.
Yeah, I just think that's,
was tricky.
yeah, I mean, obviously my ears are listening for region 2. I just was surprised that region 2 wasn't part of it.
So,
Just tests, yeah.
yeah, but that's a good question because there's going to be probably a little bit of confusion moving forward because yes, this program was initially was about Wasatch Front area, and the initial geography was for Wasatch Front area. But when we get to the selection tool, I'll let you know that it was so promising, and there was a lot of interest in program and the findings that we had to actually expand it to the statewide in some of the areas of the program, which Move Utah program actually funded all of those efforts. That was around the statewide. But that's a good point. Also, we had for those I didn't want to get to those technologies because of the limited time we have here. But to answer your question, we had to come up with different locations that already have those technologies like side fire to be able to test them. So that was something that UDOT Traffic and Safety Division helped us a lot to even identify those locations. So that's why probably Region 2 was not one of those locations. Okay. Okay, we followed some of those national best practices I told you about. Also, we learned from locals, and all of those helped us to understand the methodology when it comes to, counter site selections. And also we developed a set of criteria for counting locations. To get a balanced mix of the locations, we had to develop a site selection tools and a site selection process to create a representative sample of different land use types, different facility and facility context within the region. And this was helping us to ensure that we're capturing data equitably across the different environments and not just looking into the high use areas when it comes to active transportation. Also, this methodology ensured us that it's comparable across different locations, regardless if they're state route, or if they're local route. Next, please. Also, if Wasatch Front area is a big, region, to keep the number of the sites and when it comes to site selection, to keep the number of the sites manageable, we had to group them into simple categories and also the factor groups. For Wasatch Front area, we had 4 factor groups that you can see it on the map: high active transportation demand areas and low AT demand areas in residential areas, and also the high AT and low AT demand areas in non-residential areas. And we use also WFRC bike model inputs a lot for creating this site selection tool. That local can actually use the site selection tool to come up with optimal locations when they want to establish counter program, or also they want to find locations for different counters. And by taking a statewide approach or regional approach, we wanted to ensure that the rural and urban areas are equally represented in the area. And that's why we came up with this factor group. And also this was actually help us to prevent resource concentration in few regions. And also we wanted, again, to balance infrastructure investment when it comes even to counting and counter equipments. And it will help us to, have a comprehensive understanding of pedestrian and bicycle activity throughout the state. Next, please. So here you can see a screenshot of the site selection tool. This is an interactive tool that allow the users or agencies to filter the network segments and network zones based off the certain characteristics when it comes to when it comes to placing counters. And again, to just go back to some of the stuff that I brought up before, one of the important product of this study, which is the site selection tool, is allowing most of the agencies and local to filter location based on the active transportation demand, the facility type, the transit access, and more criteria. And this is available to all. So that's publicly accessible. This is available to all, and you can use it in local level to find optimal location for new counter placement. And again, to mention that initial geography was only included in the Wasatch Front area. However, later there was so many interest and demand from other partners, including Utah Trail Network, to create a statewide tool selection. So we added 2 other factor group in rural areas to the 4-factor group that we had, and we expanded this tool to the entire state to make it a statewide selection tool. Next, please. Okay, when it comes to data, we understand that, the accessibility of the data and the accuracy of data is very important to the agencies and partners. And through the, Google survey and all of those stakeholder meeting, we understood that there are different agencies that have different purposes when they're collecting active transportation. Let's say if we are looking at Salt Lake County Park and Recreation. If we're looking at, some of the remote trails, they're different when it comes to, different locations. Or for example, if we want to count pedestrian and bicyclists on a street facilities, it's different in the purpose of counting, AT. So in remote areas, some of those agencies are using different type of equipments, and they're using, for example, manual data count or even manual data retriever. But on a street facilities, we can use more of like automated, for example, data transmission. So to kind of accommodate most of the agencies and other locals that are using different type of equipments, different type of data collection, we came up with this standardized data management workflow that allows different agencies and to bring all of their data from different agencies in different data format in one stop shop. That is that is UDOT GIS platform that we call it UPlan, and it's again will be publicly available. This data will be publicly available. So the intent is that UDOT can bring all of these data and count data from different data resources in one GIS platform to support data sharing with all the other agencies. So we have all of them in one place, and they're compatible, and it's something that we have to work on the back end. But then, for example, let's say smaller cities have 1 or 2 counters, but MAG area has over 20 counters, or Park City have, for example, over 14 counters, and statewide we have over 100 counters within this program right now. Any agencies will have access to the summarized data of the counters throughout the state, regardless of if they own the program or they're paying for the maintenance or anything like that. And we think that would be really helpful to have access to all of those data in one place. Next, please. So Talking about the program guidance and recommendation a little bit more. So we talked about all of the data and everything, in the back end, but this effort actually brought together UDOT and regional government and also local jurisdictions because we wanted to ensure the consistency and also resource sharing. We wanted to have a unified approach to active transportation data collection because that was something that Wasatch Front and also statewide we're lacking in those type of coordinated when it comes to data collection. So we knew that the collaboration was the key. And our success is really on the commitment of multiple agencies working together when it comes to data collection and sharing it. Like agencies at all level, either if it's state like UDOT or MPOs or local governments, they're bringing different perspective and also different needs to the table, and we want to be aware of that. And that was one of the big things that we mentioned, we touched base in the report as well. So the result, we want that result to be a system that benefits everyone, from planners to policymakers, to public, to transportation plan. Anyone can use actually, the data platform and also this report to establish this program. And the next several slides, I'm gonna actually go through highlighting some of the critical component of the program and also some of the recommendation for agencies that either own count program or interested in establishing a count program. And again, there's a lot to cover, but there are going to be a lot more detail in the report when I'm going to share it with you. Next, please. So this study actually was designed to address the gaps in active transportation data collection and management, and also to foster collaboration among agencies. So we realized that collaboration is the key between the state and regional and local agencies that are playing a vital role in shaping this program. However, that's the challenging part of it as well. We learned from stakeholders, we learned from Google survey, we learned from the national best practices and local focus group that there's a need for some data sharing agreement, not only just data, but also there's a need for recommending some roles and responsibilities for the partners in these type of program, with a special attention to those key areas like funding, installation of the counters, the equipment, the purchasing process, the maintenance, the data management. So these were some of the limitations that were brought up a lot in those focus group that we wanted to address and focus. We wanted to address all of them in the report. So again, this is like a big shape of how to, it's like, this infographic is a roadmap kind of that guiding locals or anyone who wants to start their own count program to follow through from, site selection or funding or equipment and things like that. So by any means, it doesn't mean that UDOT or us are telling you how to do this. It's just some resources that you can use regardless of where the funding comes from or not. But also there are recommendations that if the funding is federal or state, how to approach it when it comes to maintenance, for example, how many staffing time needed, how many hours needed, what are the cost estimations and things like that. So the program side in the report, the second part of the report is focusing on all of those recommendations when it comes to a program. Next slide, please. The same thing with cost estimation, again, with roles and responsibility. That was another thing that, especially as smaller agencies like cities, we have some cities that have 1 or 2 counters, and it's a little bit harder for them to, kind of define the future or be successful in moving forward in the future, to understand the cost estimation, the cost benefit of the program, and what the program needs to be, to be ongoing program and be successful in the future. So there are other part of the report that are about the cost estimations of different type of counters, different type of program, different type of funding when it comes to staff, time, and also the maintenance and all of those things.
And Ned, I'm just going to pipe in here, noting time. There's so much information that you've provided and will be available to people, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if we can get through the next few slides relatively quickly, is that all right?
3 slides.
Perfect,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Okay, next slide. Okay, what's next? So I just want to give you a good news that we are one of the few states that's leading the way when it comes to active transportation count program and these type of program. And we already have several forward-thinking agencies like I mentioned Salt Lake City, MAG, WFRC, that they have over hundreds. We have over hundreds of counters throughout the state, and they're managing their own program. So we saw this as an opportunity to create a unique and first of its kind counting pilot program. I call it pilot because we're still figuring out, a lot of limitations within the partnered program. But also this pilot program allows us to test the process before the full implementation or jumping into something that we don't know what exactly is. So next, please. So this is and at the last section of the report, also we're covering, the pilot program. So the pilot program is the part that was not initially part of this project or this program as well, even though we are mentioning it in the report, but it's an ongoing, program. It started in September in 2024, and it will be, it will ongo until September in 2025, and I'll probably be back here to just report on the pilot program. But that's essentially, we initiated a one-year pilot program to test the data collection, sharing, and storage process. Not all of the things that we called out in program recommendation and guidance, but data sharing process part of the thing. So we're going to test that part. And this pilot leverages 5 existing AT count program we have throughout the state: MAC, San George, Salt Lake City, Salt Lake Park and Recreation. And we are going to, I'm just keep saying we are going to, actually we're doing it right now. So we're taking, we are on the contract with a vendor, Echo Counter, in this project specifically because all of those 5 agencies that I named are using Echo Counter as its counter equipment. So we're on the contract with them to get the data from all of these agencies through an API platform. And then UDOT has its own platform and it's developing its own dashboard. So all of those data will be collected and stored and managed through UDOT dashboard and will be accessible, publicly accessible. So this is different than the site selection tool. This is only about the actual and existing counters that are available throughout the state. And I want to use this opportunity to let you know that if you haven't heard about, this effort, it's not late. Because we started and we have pilot program, it's not late. If you know of any agencies that have their own counters or they count program, or they have funding, or they don't know where to start and how and when, please let them know that we can help them and we are here. We can help them, in creating the program or even bringing their data. At least we can do is bringing their data into the data sharing platform. And next, please. Oh, did you have a question? This is my last slide. So what's next? Next step that, again, it's not covered in this study because the study is done. But the next step is essentially to secure dedicated funding, finalizing some multi-agency or interagency agreements, and also expanding the deployment of the counter program statewide. That will help us to transition from the pilot projects that I just talked about to a fully operational count program. So what are we hoping for? We hope that this captures your attention and it sparks some interest in improving, active transportation data collection. And through this program, we explored ways to make data-driven decision-making more accessible and useful to public. And also we're excited about the possibilities to use this data. Our goal is to see if this approach is adopted at UDOT own, AT facilities and infrastructures. And we hope that local agencies can see and find value in this as well, whether if that means that using these methods or these reports to create your own program or incorporate just some of those elements into your own efforts and supporting, a more data-informed approach throughout the state. So we welcome your involvement or any feedback or suggestions, and we recognize that there are many challenges and limitations. Again, all of them are covered in the report to count, limitations to count active transportation users. But we believe that findings from this report can help improve data collection on both local and state, IT infrastructure. Most importantly, we're here to collaborate and support efforts to integrate your data into the statewide AT count data platform. Next. Next. Thank you.
Netta, thanks a lot. And I have to say, as working on this project with you, Netta's done a wonderful job. It's been a lot of twists and turns to this project. It's been a heavy lift, but we're in a really good place with the pilot program moving forward. We'll be sure to make this material available to everybody. And hopefully I'm not putting you in a bad spot, but if anybody has questions, maybe Netta can stick around
Yeah,
after the
sure.
meeting and just speak with you one-on-one there. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
And because we're running over time, I'm put my apologies to Ben Withrich, who's put together, we talked about funding earlier in the meeting. We do have our WFRC has our yearly round of applications coming in, and he's put together a list of all the biking and walking projects that have been applied for. We can hand that out to you, and Jordan can put the list in the chat online. So again, these are projects that have been applied for from you as local municipalities, tapping into WFRC resources. These projects will be evaluated over the coming months. And starting as early as tomorrow, we'll be doing field tours throughout the Salt Lake County and then points north for a total of 4 days in the field. We'll be going and speaking with each of your representatives about these individual projects and you speaking to the merits of those, and we'll be asking questions. And Ben, did I get this right? There were about $1.2 million worth of projects in the Ogden-Layton area and $2.1 million in the Salt Lake area that were applied for?
Correct. The available amount of monies.
Oh, that's the available amount of money. Okay, got it. The available amount of money, 1.2 in the Ogden-Layton area, so that's Davis County and points north to Brigham City, and then 2.1 million available in Salt Lake County itself.
Correct.
And decisions on this, just give us a quick timeline on decisions made for all of these applications, if you would.
Thank you. So as you talked about, part of our evaluation process is field reviews, and we've got a lot of data that we'll crunch, but between now and the end of March, and then in March, the technical advisory committees made up of the city engineers and public works will make recommendations to Transcom. Transcom is Transportation Coordinating Committee for the Regional Council. They will make recommendations then to the Regional Council in April for those programs or those projects to enter into the draft programs in preparation for the draft tip, which will go out for public review and comment during July.
Thanks, Ben. So sort of see where we talked about early on, right? Talking about the planning process that we've been working on, the regional transportation plan, collaboration, and how it filters down to the transportation improvement program. And these projects are getting applied for and getting built, right, with the funding that WFRC has available, mixed in with other funds that are available for these projects. And so it's sort of see the end of our process here with these types of applications that are being applied for. So Ben's always available for questions, right, Ben? If anybody has anything on this, and if you see something on here is like, wait, I thought my municipality applied for this. Well, we're going to have to talk about better communication moving forward. I guess it might be a little bit late in this year's process, but we want to prepare you for next year's as well. And we're happy to be available at any time as a resource for that. So thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
And with that, again, thank you for your attendance today. Happy 2025. Look forward to seeing you again. Mayor Burton, welcome as an honored guest. And happy birthday, by the way, if anybody was able to attend the mayor's birthday party. It was quite fun. No, you look a year younger, actually. You look nice. But reach out anytime to any of our agencies that are involved in the committee here, MAG, UDOT, UTA, WFRC, and we'll be in touch with that. There's some information about the Open Public Meetings Act that was sent out in emails. We're not going to watch it here, but if you haven't watched it, please do so. And there'll be a link in the follow-up email as well from today's meeting. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Mayor Merrill. Motion in a second?
Second.
Second, Mayor Phippen. Okay. And I'm assuming everybody's saying aye, aye. And we're adjourned. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks, Mayor Petro. Everybody online, thanks so much.